Using my own account as an example here, I believe that most players that started playing around day 1 is probably getting close to the 300 pulls on the standard banner, and this means you get to select one of the standard units for your account. In order to avoid players picking up like the wrong choice for their account, I decided to make this video where I'm going over every single one of these S-rank units so you can understand the best one for you. We have a total of 3 DPS units here: Soldier 11, Nekomata, and Grace. And we have 3 utility support units. We have Rina, Koleda, and Lycaon. Koleda and Lycaon are stunners, Rina is a support unit, and we're going over every single one of these. So let's start with Grace. Grace is an electric anomaly unit, and she's better used on mono electric team composition. That's because of her additional ability, which, as you can see here, it works whenever you use the same attribute or faction. And faction wise, we only have Koleda, Ben, and Anton. The thing about her additional ability is that it's going to increase your shock damage by up to 36%. That's definitely quite a lot, but this is only for shock damage. This is not going to work on disorder damage. And the issue with shock is that the amount of damage you can deal to the enemy is kind of limited every second. This has some issues because Grace damage outside of shock is pretty bad. Basic attack is going to deal a mix of physical and electric damage, so not that great. We have her EX special, which don't have really great multipliers, and it's mostly used for the build-up that you're going to get into your core skill. So outside of shock, Grace damage is pretty low. That's why usually you're going to pair another DPS unit in your team. And that's usually is Anton, at least for now. Probably Harumasa is going to replace Anton, since Harumasa is going to be an electric DPS in the next patch. But you cannot play Grace as a main DPS, that's a huge fact. You could use her on Disorder, but there are a few issues when you try to play Grace on a Disorder team. So Grace needs same attribute or faction, and this kind of limits compositions that you can place Grace into. Another bit of issue is that most of your build-up is going to be behind your EX special, and Grace alone has not a good energy regeneration. She gets Anomaly Mastery on her core, so it's not exactly like Burnies, for example, which gets energy regeneration. Mindscapes kind of solves this. If you take a look at Mindscape 1, it's going to give you some extra energy regeneration. Mindscape 2 is probably the best one because it reduces electric resistance on the enemy, and resistance buffs are really strong in the game, at least for now, because we don't have a lot of sources. But in any case, it still needs you to get a total of 3 copies of Grace, and if you're watching this video, I believe that you're not going to look into Mindscape, maybe Mindscape 1. That's everything about Grace. Let's go to the next one, which is Rina. And Rina is kind of funny because I personally really under-evaluated Rina in the 1.0, and I believe that most players, most of the community also did the same thing to her, because penetration used to feel a little underwhelming. You probably already watched it, but in any case, I have 2 videos on penetration where I explain exactly how it works, and I also have an updated video where I explain why Rina value kind of is increasing on these last patches. If you didn't watch, I'm going to leave that in the top right corner for you to watch. Highly recommend checking it out so you can understand how penetration works. But in any case, Rina is a truly unique support in the game because she's going to offer penetration for your whole squad based on her own penetration. So you basically stack a lot of penetration on Rina. Penetration ratio, by the way, it's not flat penetration. So you stack every single penetration on Rina, and she's going to buff your whole squad, your other 2 units, with her penetration. A little bit of an issue on Rina's kit is about her additional ability, which also only works with attribute or faction, and it's only going to increase the damage potential of electric DPS units. It's going to increase the duration of shock by 3 seconds. You also get 10% electric damage when shocked enemies are on the field. This basically means that once you remove shock from the enemies, you're going to lose this 10% electric damage, which could lower her overall utility, her overall DPS increase for some DPS units. So let's say you're running Grace with Rina, Burnies, for example. Once you apply shock, you go into Burnies, and then you disorder the shock. The moment you disorder the shock, you're going to lose this 10% damage, which can lower Grace overall damage on the next shock. So there's a lot of bit of issues if you want to play around this 10% electric damage on a disorder focused thing composition. But in any case, even outside of shock, even outside of electric units, 30% penetration is not a small value. It can offer a really great DPS increase, especially if you are already stacking penetration. But the main issue around Rina is how she actually works. In order for you to activate her core, you need the puppets that she controls to stay on the field. This happens whenever you use a skill, a basic attack, any action that you're going to perform is going to leave the puppets on the field for around 5 seconds or so. And this means that every 5 seconds you need to place Rina on the field, use a basic attack, chain attack, anything just to leave the puppets on the field. And this whole swapping, there's a lot of players that kind of don't like it. And in this case, I would say that Mindscape 1 is a must for you. That's because the Mindscape 1 pretty much is going to double the amount of the time the puppets are going to stay on the field, and this is a huge quality of life. So imagine that instead of every 5 seconds, every 10, 11 seconds you need to swap to Rina. This leaves a lot more room for your DPS to stay on the field, doing their combos or things like this. You don't need all this back and forth swapping just to benefit from the penetration. Not to mention, it's also going to increase Rina's score on 30%, meaning that instead of 30% penetration, you're going to get a total of 39% penetration. So it's definitely like a lot. This is one of the best Mindscapes between all the standard units. Outside of Mindscape 1, overall, Rina's Mindscapes are not that good. So yeah, that's it about Rina. Next up, we have Koleda, which is still the queen when it comes to stunning the enemy. That's all because of her core skill, which is going to increase the days of your EX special, which isn't low, by the way, by 60%. So when you add the 60% extra days on your EX special, you get a lot of days. And this alone makes Koleda one of the best stunners in the game, because all you need to do when playing with her is do a basic attack 1, basic attack 2, and then boom, there you go, you use this EX special, lots of days on the enemy. You're probably going to stun them in a single EX special, maybe 2 depending on the enemy size. Well, all of this also comes with a catch. Koleda is pretty much useless outside of this. Stunning the enemy is the only thing she's going to offer for you. Her additional ability is going to offer some increased damage on your chain attack, and as you probably know, chain attacks definitely deal some damage, but it's not the main source of damage in any DPS units. Her utility for your DPS is a little bit useless, not to mention that her EX special also costs 60 energy, so getting this amount of energy for Koleda is going to take some energy regeneration sources. When it comes to Mindscape, Mindscape 1 offers some days potential for her EX special, but well, you already get 60 on her core, so Mindscape 1 is not going to offer that much. It definitely increases how much days you're going to inflict on the enemy, but it's all about saturation. So overall, Koleda Mindscapes are all pretty weak, and I wouldn't recommend you chasing Mindscapes on her. Okay, so next up we have Nekomata, which is probably one of the weirdest DPS in this list because of how she works, and also the fact that Billy is a free unit that is also a physical DPS unit. So Nekomata is a unit that can be a sustained DPS because of how her core skill works. Whenever you do a dodge counter or a quick assist, you're going to get increased damage on everything for 6 seconds. This means that Nekomata kind of works better against aggressive enemies as long as you keep dodging the enemy. But when it comes to stun window, you definitely need a support unit so you can trigger quick assist and keep benefiting from the extra damage on your whole rotation. Otherwise, 6 seconds is way too low and you're going to lose this extra damage through your rotation. Nekomata additional ability also don't help her that much, and that's because in order for you to benefit from it, you need to apply Assault on the enemy. Of course, her EX special is quite easy for you to cast because it only costs 40 energy, and if you field her, you're definitely going to regenerate a lot of energy. But the issue here is that Nekomata by herself can't apply Assault that easily on the enemy, People usually pair Nekomata with Piper, so you can easily benefit from this additional ability. But of course, there are also some issues because Nekomata is not going to stay on the field that much. She's only going to work as a bit of burst DPS unit. A lot of issues when it comes to team buildings. It's definitely a DPS, of course, but overall quite underwhelming performance. When it comes to Mindscape, and as you can see here, it lost to Nekomata a total of 2 times in this account. Her Mindscapes are all pretty good for a DPS. Mindscape 1 is going to offer you physical resistance debuffs, and as I said before, resistance debuffs are quite strong on this game. 4 and 6 is going to increase crit stats, which is really good, but I don't think you're going all the way to Mindscape 6 anyway. So yeah, overall, Nekomata is definitely one of the DPS units in the game. There are better options here, and the better option is actually Soldier 11, which is a fire DPS unit, a really great sustained fire DPS unit. She gets a lot of damage on her basic attacks and also gets additional damage against stunned enemies. Of course, all of this comes with a catch, and the catch is that Soldier 11 is a bit of a high skill gameplay unit, because you need to time your basic attacks properly in order to benefit from the fire damage. If you spam your basic attacks instead of timing it properly, you're going to deal physical damage to the enemy, and as you can see, this is going to hurt her DPS quite a lot because you're not going to be benefiting from her core skill, you're also not going to be benefiting from your additional ability, any fire DPS, any fire set, you're not going to benefit from any of this. The issue with Soldier 11 is pretty much only this. You need to have a high skill, you need to time your basic attack properly, otherwise you're going to hurt your DPS quite a lot. Of course, her EX special and her chain attack ultimate is going to give you some extra free triggers for your basic attack, so you can mash down your basic attack button when doing this. But outside of this, since her EX special costs a lot of energy, 80 energy, you definitely need to time your basic attacks properly. Another bit of issue on Soldier 11 is about her Mindscapes, because Soldier 11 Mindscapes might be one of the worst that I see in this game. Mindscape 1 is going to offer you basically a free EX special every 50 seconds, so it's not that much. Mindscape 2 offers you some damage, but once again, it's all about saturation. Soldier 11 already has a lot of damage on her core and her additional ability. Adding 36% extra damage is not going to add a lot of damage to your Soldier 11. Mindscape 4 is only protection, and Mindscape 6, well, Mindscape 6 is quite good. Once again, fire resistance debuffs are super strong in this game, but no way you're going all the way for Mindscape 6 just to get some extra potential on your Soldier 11. So yeah, that's all about Soldier 11, one of the best sustained DPS units in this list. And lastly, we have Lycaon, which used to be the king of the meta because of the release of the game. The very first win that we had when the game released was Ellen. Ellen is a sustained ice DPS unit, and Lycaon is one of the best units you can use to pair with any ice DPS in the game. That's because his core skill is going to reduce the enemy ice resistance by 25%, and 25% is definitely quite a lot. And everything you need to do is use your EX special or even your assist follow-up, which you're going to be triggering quite a lot on stunners. So really easy for you to trigger this, and it's going to increase your damage by quite a lot. Not to mention that his additional ability is also going to increase the stun damage multiplier by 35%. And stun damage multiplier is something that pretty much any unit in the game can utilize. That's exactly why Qingyi got a lot of attention and was being paired with pretty much any DPS in the game, because stun damage multiplier is something that is going to increase your damage by quite a lot, and it doesn't matter if you are a sustained DPS, it doesn't matter if you are a burst DPS, you are an anomaly unit, everyone can benefit from it. Outside of this, personally, I don't like Lycaon playstyle because he needs you to keep charging pretty much everything that he does. You're going to use a basic attack while you need to hold down your basic attack button in order to charge and increase the damage and the days. Not to mention that most of the days is going to be around the last basic attacks. This means the 4th and the 5th one. And this means that for you to fully utilize and benefit from all the days Lycaon can provide for you, you're going to need some extra field time on him. Of course, this could be fixed by only using your charged EX special, which has a pretty decent days multiplier, but his core skill is only going to increase the days from your basic attack. Quite sad for Lycaon. However, once you get his Mindscape 1, Mindscape 1 is going to add some extra days for your EX special, basically meaning that Lycaon is going to become a bit of a burst stunner if you wish to do so, because instead of using his basic attack, you can just pop Lycaon onto the field, use your charged EX special, and there you go, you're going to benefit from a huge days on the enemy. Highly recommend going for Mindscape 1 in case you are running a sustained DPS with him. That's it, so let's try to wrap it up and make things simpler for you now that you understand every single unit. Grace is definitely in a weird spot, especially with Yanagi's release, because if you're looking for a disorder, then Yanagi is going to be the best option for you, not Grace. I would say that Grace still has some space in pretty much any account, as long as you like the idea of playing in a more mono-electric damage team. Next up we have Rina. Rina is one of the most unique and probably the best one for everyone to pick here, because she's the only source of penetration outside of Disc 5 and Perfect Electro. Really solid unit to have in any account. Of course, to fully utilize her kit, you're going to need to pair her with another electric unit, which in this case means you're going to need either Grace, Yanagi, or maybe Harumasa that we're going to get in the next patch. But even outside of electric DPS units, 30% penetration is not something you should sleep to. Maybe in the future, once we get limited support units, Rina value could lower a little bit, but overall one of the best solid choices between all of this. Koleda is the unit you should pick in case you feel that you need a stunner in your account. Maybe you are playing Soldier 11, which is a sustained DPS unit. You don't want to remove field time from Soldier 11. Then Koleda is definitely going to deal a lot of days on the enemy in a short field time. The problem is that this is all Koleda is going to offer for Soldier 11. When you compare to Lighter, for example, Lighter is going to offer you fire resistance shred, is going to offer you a lot of fire damage. Lighter's rotation is a little bit longer than Koleda, but the days that he's going to apply is also definitely not a small value. So overall, Koleda is still a solid unit when it comes to dealing pure days, but she's not going to offer any utility for your team. Next up, we have Nekomata, which is quite sad because, honestly, I would rather recommend you to go for Billy Mindscape 6 instead of going for Nekomata. Physical units overall still don't have a really great support unit for them, and the way that Nekomata kit actually works is so weird that you're actually better using Billy maybe, because Billy is not going to have a huge restriction on his core, meaning that even on stun phases you don't need to swap back to your support. I would only recommend going for a Nekomata if you still need the physical DPS, because outside of this, Billy is an A rank, he's going to appear on a lot of banners. You can easily go for Mindscapes on Billy and get a lot of potential on here instead of going for Nekomata. Next up we have Soldier 11, which is the best DPS on this list. The issue, once again, is that we don't have a lot of fire support units. Lighter is the only one for now, and probably the best support unit you can pair with Soldier 11, but outside of Lighter, pretty much only default universal supports, that's all you're going to have for Soldier 11. Lucy, which is going to offer attack, any unit can use. Caesar, also a lot of quality of life on Caesar because of the shield. You don't need to worry about taking damage between your animations. But if you can master all the timing on her basic attacks, if you can master everything and don't see an issue with the lack of supports, maybe you're going to get Lighter on the rerun, maybe you're already on Lighter, then Soldier 11 is going to benefit from Lighter quite a lot. And finally, we have Lycaon, which is the best unit you could look for when it comes to ice compositions. Of course, all because of his core skill that is going to reduce the enemy resistance by 25%. This is even higher than Lighter, but of course, Lighter is also going to offer ice damage as well. I would say that if you're the own Lighter, then Lycaon is not going to add that much. Lighter is better than Lycaon, but if you don't own Lighter and you still plan to go for an Ellen rerun that maybe you're going to get into the 1.4, because 1.4 is usually the patch where Hoyer starts going for reruns in this game, then Lycaon is going to be a really solid option. Miyabi is also releasing on the next patch. In case you're going to skip Lighter and you're planning to go for either an Ellen rerun or Miyabi, then I would highly recommend getting Lycaon here, because the amount of damage it's going to provide for those ice DPS unit is quite huge. So yeah, this is pretty much everything. I really hope this video could help you decide between every single unit and which one is going to offer more value for your account. And let me know in the comments down below which unit you're going to pick for you, because me personally, I am definitely going for Rina. I don't own her yet, and even if I did, I would probably go just for the Mindscape one. Rina right now is really unique, and in case you can't understand why she's so good right now, then I highly recommend to check my last penetration video once again that I'm going to leave on the top right corner. As usual, thanks for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in my next video.